Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what's coming up. Naismith, nae chance. Falkirk fizzle out at Celtic Park. And a hero in the Highlands saving the day at Inverness. Hello, I'm Andrew Slaven, your jovial guide once more through the mire, misery, myopathy of Scottish football. Yes, another week goes by and we seem to be losing managers like flies at the moment. Why can't we all just get along? It's not all doom and gloom though, I have to say. With every burst ACL, there's a banger from Nicky Clark or Lewis Stevenson. What a goal from him at the weekend. So, to help me get through these riddles of sackings, spankings, and Livingston, there's no better man to start with than commentator and Livingston superfan Calum Brown. Welcome to the show, Calum. How's it going, man?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here. I'm an avid listener, so nice to be on the full show. Been on as a guest, but good to be on. Yeah,
And on the full show, in the big time, mate, in the big time. But you're in France, and you have been for a wee while. You were commentating for BN Sport on Ligue 1.
yeah.
And what are you up to at the moment?
Still working there, commentating in France. I did Reims versus PSG last night for.
Class.
That was a Ligue 1 match. Reims 1-1. So always nice when an underdog gets a result against the big guns. But yeah, still enjoying it over here. Weather's not great at the minute though, but it's good.
Typical Scot, man. Like doing a PSG game, and it's like it was a good wee game, just downplaying it.
Yeah.
Whereabouts in France are you based, Calum?
Paris, actually. Yeah. I'm about 10 minutes from PSG Stadium. But I don't think they're a big fan of me because that was the 8th game I've done PSG live, and they've only won once. So for the team that's at the top, it's I'm a bit of a curse.
Nice, love that. Now, Finn, you've ruined your own intro. You jumped in too early. I was going to give you the big sell. I was going to say, and in the blue corner, he prefers royal blue, but he's more sky blue now because you work for Melbourne City FC as Mr. Head Creative Man. How are you, man?
I'm good, yeah, very good. Thanks for having me on the big show as well, Andrew. It's nice to be here.
You're more than welcome. All right, John, let's get this show on the road.
You think I'm going to answer a stupid question like that?
We've brought in this new thing this week because we all work in the sports industry, and there's a few industry questions that have been flying in. It's picking up, which is quite good fun. We've had a question in asking us the best piece of advice you've ever been given about your job or your career. So as you're the newbie, Calum, you can take things away. And you can also say I've had rubbish advice.
Yeah. Difficult because I'm obviously the newbie on this, but I'm the newbie in terms of working in media. You guys have multiple years of experience on me, so I don't know, to be fair. Best piece of advice I've been given, probably just going out and doing things, going out and getting the experience. At the start, it's probably not paid at the start. I know certainly until I started working for the club on a more full-time basis. Although then I was still only part-time.
Was that Livingston?
Yeah, I started volunteering at Livingston. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Started volunteering about 16, 17, just writing the odd article for the programme, and then you kind of build a rapport. So I would say just not just speaking to people so you get contacts and things like that, actually building relationships with people. Speaking to people, if you're at a game, for example, I was doing club media. I think Laura actually said it on last week's show just about, there'll be people from Sky there at a big game, maybe BBC, and if you're in the same press box or kind of media zone as them, just speak to them. The worst that can happen is they tell you to get lost or whatever, but everyone's very friendly is what I've learned, and people will give you their time. So yeah, just kind of get out there, speak to people. Probably the best advice I could give if anybody's gonna listen to me is the worst that can happen is somebody says no.
Nice. That's pretty good, actually. I won't be able to better that. So, Finn, you can go next.
I actually don't know if I can better that as well. It's probably not hugely related to Scottish football or anything, but obviously the vast majority of my work that I've done, certainly up until the kind of new role I started in the last year at Melbourne City has been working as an editor. Honestly, one of the best bits of advice I was given when I was still a very junior editor years ago was a slightly older, more long in the tooth editor had said to me, whenever you're submitting something for review, always leave a fairly obvious mistake in it. So like a typo or something else that you know is a mistake. But he said, if you're presenting that to people, especially if it's multiple people reviewing something, that's the mistake they'll pick up on. Whereas if you submit something that looks kind of perfect or whatever, and there's lots of people reviewing it, they tend to all pick up on things that aren't actually issues or problems in your edit. So he said, if you give them a glaring mistake, they'll all pick up on that, and then they'll usually leave the rest of the edit for stuff that doesn't need changed. And I found that quite helpful. So let's try and stick to that. But just to go back to Calum's point, again, like my experience within the Scottish football TV network or fraternities is pretty scant. But I think it's always been my experience as well, when you approach people, especially if you're a bit younger or junior in your role, people that are a bit more senior, they actually do tend to be quite good with their time and their expertise and sharing it with you. I think it can be quite daunting being around people where you're like, oh man, that's like they're from the BBC or something like that, or from Sky, like I can't talk to them. People are genuinely up for talking about their career and doing stuff and helping you out. There was a film that I made a couple of years ago for FIFA, which was kind of the story of Glasgow City. And we were recording interviews with the two women that had set up Glasgow City ahead of the Women's League Cup final, which was between Glasgow City and Celtic, being held at Firhill, and the game is being broadcast on BBC Alba. So I was kind of filming interviews and doing stuff off at the side. But honestly, the team at BBC Alba could not have been nicer in being like, oh, if you need anything, let us know, or helping us with things within the infrastructure of the ground or whatever. It absolutely didn't need to do anything, and we our paths weren't really crossing during the filming of what we were doing and what they were doing, but could not be nicer. Even like followed up with emails and stuff afterwards. So I think it's a great point Calum makes of if you are working for clubs or in fan media or something, even as a volunteer or whatever, always ask people for advice. Like you're saying, the worst they can say is no, but generally I've found people to be quite open and receptive to speaking about their industry. Like I certainly would, if somebody had editing questions or wanted to have a chat about certain creative things, whatever, always willing to have a chat with people about that and done that in the past. So yeah, I think as well, like with club media, it's such an important thing, because I think so many clubs, especially that maybe don't have the resources and going down the football pyramid within Scotland, it is all volunteers. It's people doing it for the love of the club, for the love of the game. And it's brilliant because you get these people that are passionate and talented doing it. They just might not have the resources or the money or a lot of the time the expertise, but where there's a will, there's a way. And I think if you're thinking of getting involved with like your local team or doing something, you're like, oh, I do a bit of graphic design and I've noticed that like our club's design stuff isn't great, or the video stuff or whatever, offer and just do it, because like you're saying, Calum, like your career path could lead you to working for broadcasters, moving abroad, doing all this stuff. You've got absolutely nothing to lose, and if it doesn't, you're still doing it because you love your team, you love your club. So
I've got a great story of one of my best pals in the industry who now like exec produced all the films at like TNT Sports and did a lot of films for BT Sports. I worked with him at ESPN. He basically got into the game just by, I think he was reading like 442 magazine, and there was an interview in it, and the article shared the email address of who was being interviewed, and he literally just emailed the guy and said, I want a job. And he got a job out of it. There's some simple things, but if you're not bold enough to just like go for it, and sometimes you kind of can't rely on just hard work to get to where you're going to get. You need to be vocal enough to put your face in front of people so that they can see who you are, and then your body of work will come afterwards. So there's loads of ways to get into the industry. I think we've kind of fallen into the category last week of how you get into the industry rather than what's the best piece of advice for our career. But it all works in tandem.
Stranraer stay in League Two, and can I say, John Hannah Muriel Gray, Ollie McCoist, Lorraine Kelly, Wally's roundabout, Kirsty Young, your boys took a hell of a beating.
Right, shall we talk about Scottish football then? Has anyone seen anything interesting? Because I know I have, but does anyone want to lead on what I think we should lead on?
Inverness versus Cove Rangers. Referee, I think Stuart Luke, he was injured during the match, and to stop it from being abandoned, there was a PA announcement at the ground across the tannoy. Is there a qualified referee? And an Inverness fan, Jamie McKinnon, came to the rescue. He took over linesman duties in the final 20 minutes of the match. So no goals or anything, no controversial decisions, I believe. But obviously we know in Scottish football, officials aren't usually cheered or anything like that. But McKinnon brilliantly received a round of applause after effectively saving the match.
That's amazing, man. I read the article about this guy, and apparently, yeah, he'd refereed like a kids game just a few hours before, and he was late to get to the match, so he was still in a lot of his referee gear. He just didn't have his boots on, so he had his referee's jacket on and everything, and so he was in the crowd, and everyone was looking at him, going, "Will you go up? you going to do it? You look the part." Absolute class.
I love this story because it feels like, I think we all go to football and you have that like dream as a kid of wearing the kit to the ground and then one of the players gets injured and they need someone so you get called up out of it. But the closest anybody ever seems to get to it is when the referee or the lineman decks it and they need to get somebody who's a qualified official to come onto the pitch. But I mean, I would love to see this happen in the top flight. Like, can you imagine like an Old Firm game or the Edinburgh Derby or something, and they have to get one of the fans out the stand to run the line for the final 20 minutes? There could be some interesting decisions. But fair play to Jamie. I thought it was absolutely class that he stepped in.
This actually happened at a game I was at, must have been about 10 years ago, and I was debating sharing this story, but more than that, it actually happened to my dad.
No way.
Yeah. So,
Oh, wow.
I mean, as you know, I used to go before moving here home and away with Livingston, and it was just I think a midweek game at Dumbarton, and my dad works in East Kilbride, so he met me and my papa there. We got the supporters bus through. My dad was similar to Jamie. He was late to the game, kind of came in his work suit and everything like that. And it must have been about, I think it was the championship, Livy at Dumbarton. I don't know, maybe similar sort of time, 20 minutes to go. The ref does his hamstring or something like that. Don't think there's a fourth official. So there's a PA announcement, and I'm kind of like that, and like he's not like he's not category 1 or anything, but my dad used to referee like kind of my boys' club games and kind of around the West Lothian area. So he didn't want to do it either, and then I think the game was going to get abandoned. So not sure that Dumbarton, I think he was in a Livy scarf and everything, and like
oh man, no way.
But he went down. Don't think there was any decision. I think it finished 1 each. I think Ian Murray was in charge of Dumbarton at the time. That was a really good team. They had Jack Ross maybe involved as assistant or something, and I don't think they were happy he was saying after the game. But
it's quite funny because you see it sometimes like in like Sunday League football, like on social media, and you see some because it's always like the coaches, they share the duties or whatever like that, or if they're short, a player will do it or something like that. And some of the offside decisions are so funny, man. But obviously this is a bit more serious than all of that. That's really cool, man.
No, well, I wasn't at the time because I was mortified.
Imagine getting ribbed back at work or back at school after that, being like, your dad's a Lino.
he was the one getting ribbed because I think he was in like size 9 shoes or something, and he's a size 12. That's all the referees could give him. So he was dancing about. It was a bit of a tough watch.
Class. Football heroes. There's not enough of them. Absolute class.
Speaking of Ian Murray, though, hey?
Oh, well, this is the thing, right? So Ian Murray, we didn't really speak about this last week because we'd taken a bit of a hiatus because me and Laura were just rammed for work and all that jazz. Not good enough. But it leads us on to this kind of, early stage of the season, and we're already in sacking season. So Ian Murray's lost his job after 1 game, the opening day of the season at Wraith Rovers. Then it was Craig Levein last week. In classic style, we record the podcast on a Sunday night, and always without fail, it seems to be a Tuesday or a late Monday decision where clubs seem to do like sack the managers or whatever. Thanks for that. And then at least Hearts had the decency to do it on a Sunday, or was it Saturday actually, to get rid of Steven Naismith. So that's three big managers. Looking at Ian Murray, he was a guy that almost got Raith Rovers back into the big time in the Premiership and just lost out to Dundee United. Steven Naismith had a fairly reasonable European run in the conference last season, and Craig Levein saved St Johnstone from relegation. But all starting this season, we're getting the hoof. Like, what do we think about all these sackings? Obviously, with Hearts, there's obvious reasons, but do we just we always say, is it too early, and why are these managers getting a full summer to spend some cash?
The Ian Murray one for me was very odd, especially as you say, he was given the time and whatever to get recruitment. I think one of the reasons they gave as well, Andy Barrowman, the CEO, was saying to do with the bad run of form towards the end of last season. Some people were saying they maybe fell away at the end or whatever, but I mean, I think Dundee United were fully expected to win the championship last year anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Raith scored maybe a lot of late goals, so did that perhaps catch up with them? Was performance not as good as results, and then it caught up? But yeah, to give him one game, it was absolutely baffling. And I think like it was done over the phone or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, it was a 3-minute phone call, Ian Murray said it was. Basically just saying they want to go in a different direction. And we've had Andy Barrowman on the podcast before. Really love the guy, really honest, really upfront. But you have to question, that seems a bit odd to do it after one game. I don't know.
I had Andy Barrowman on Levein TV at the time when we played Celtic in a game because he was CEO there. So
that's right.
It was a very well-run club, Celtic, and then I think a lot of them moved over to the Raith Rovers, and they've done a lot of good things off the park. But yeah, it was a bonkers decision. And then after that, obviously taking so long to appoint a new manager. But with St Johnstone and Hearts, for me, I can maybe understand the St Johnstone one, perhaps don't understand kind of why it's happened now after 5 games again, why you give them the full summer. Naismith one's just a results. I think 8 defeats in a row is probably unacceptable in any job. I can see why both of those have happened. Well, I would probably agree with those two, but the Murray one still to this day baffles me. Yeah.
What do you think about Naismith, Finn? Really, it's that thing of I remember last season there was so much confusion as to how well he was going to do, and he ended up doing rather well. But it's all changed now.
Well, I think rather well's putting it mildly. I mean, they were excellent at points last season, and after quite a difficult start, which people were saying like, what's going on, like what is the setup? Is he really cut out for it? Like there were calls for his head to go probably about the same time last year actually, and they were able to turn it around. Because I said last week on the show, like you were saying, what do you do if you're a Hearts fan? And I was like, I think managers need, and given what happened last season with Hearts, Naismith probably deserves time to try and turn it around. But on the flip side, I think it is like that run of form is abysmal. It's just not acceptable at a team like Hearts. And I know that there's been some tricky European ties and stuff in there as well, which they were maybe a bit unfortunate about. Maybe some individual errors costing them in certain games or whatever. But broadly, maybe it's just there's that feeling of you kind of need to stop the rot. I think, I can't remember if I made this point or not in the show last week, but there is something that I do wonder about what you have to call rookie managers, and it's not necessarily an age or experience from their playing careers or anything. And obviously, like Steven Naismith's been involved in a national team setup as well, so he's very highly thought of as a coach. But I do wonder sometimes with these managers or really their coaches that have been promoted to the managerial role, and I think Barry Robson was another one at Aberdeen recently. I don't think that they've been allowed to fail and learn from that, and they don't get the opportunity to. So it means that the first sign of things really going wrong, and it can be really difficult to manage with the weight of expectation of the supports of clubs like Hearts and Aberdeen at that level of the game. When things start to go wrong, like what do you do? You've kind of got nowhere to turn, and you've never been in that situation before. Potentially as a player, you might have been through sticky periods, but when you're the one that's helming it, you haven't had the chance to learn from it. And I think it is being able to cut your teeth at a lower level, not to say that it doesn't matter, but the pressures are different. Like if you're working as a manager of even like a lower league side or semi-pro, or in League Two or League One even, maybe there's a different set of pressures that are there and expectations, where you are afforded that, well, we've been through a rubbish run, but we're not going to get relegated, which ultimately is probably the main thing for most clubs. But at Hearts, that's not good enough, and at Aberdeen, that's not good enough. You can't base your season on, well, we're not going to get relegated, which they probably won't. But I mean, I can see both sides, and as well, maybe with the Levein thing, I think I've seen a lot of St Johnstone fans saying things like, well, you could argue with the timing of it, which is maybe not great, but I think St Johnstone fans will feel probably like Hearts fans. The squad is still quite unbalanced, even though the manager's had a few transfer windows. They're still not getting great results, and maybe in terms of the footballing departments, things are still a bit of a mess. But is that all on the manager? Is that on to do with the running of the club? I'm not entirely sure. But all of them, I just don't like to see managers lose their jobs so early into the season. And again, this happens every single year. You give a manager a full pre-season, they maybe had at least one window or longer, a couple of windows, and yet 4 or 5 games in, they've had a bit of a rubbish start to the season. It's like, well, September, you're gone.
It's that, but it happens every season. It happens all the time. And you said like Aberdeen, like it's unacceptable to happen at Aberdeen. I do wonder if it's their unbelievable start to this season is playing on the Hearts kind of owners, or the the leadership team there. I wonder if it's playing on their minds, because finishing third is such a massive thing for Hearts and Aberdeen and a few others too. But let's face it, at the moment Aberdeen are looking like a dead cert to at least challenge potentially maybe for second. You never know, first place. But Hearts having the start that they have, it is unacceptable. So Liam Fox is coming in again as caretaker charge for Hearts. I just wonder if he goes on a big run, does then he get the job? He gets the job, and then he gets a January transfer window, and then can Hearts find themselves in the same bother that they're in at the moment? Wraith Rovers have brought in Neil Collins, and Andy Barrowman's said that we had to build for the next few years. And they see this guy who's the ex-Tampa Bay Rowdies manager, and he managed Barnsley as well. He's kind of put a lot of pressure on himself by saying this, because Neil Collins is going to have to come up with some serious results, because this is supposed to be for the next few years, if that's what we're saying. But Hearts have to do that as well. And I do wonder if a lot of Heart fans were ever believing that Naismith was going to be at the club for a long time. I don't think a lot of people believe that young managers just in the game are going to get a lot of time, because they are so rookie. And if you don't, and although he started well, you just have to maintain it forever. Otherwise, you're going to get the sack. I hope Naismith comes back into the game, because he's shown that he can coach a team. He's shown that he can get good results out of a team that demands it. And it's just not worked for him. Interestingly, though, thanks to Pie and Bovril putting this on Twitter, by the way, it seems like St Mirren seems to end Hearts managers. So Daniel Stendel's last game as Hearts manager was against St Mirren, and they lost that 1-0. Robbie Nielsen's last game as Hearts manager was against St Mirren. They lost 2-0. And then Pie and Bovril said, as he was posting this, saying, Naismith brings his side to St Mirren Park tomorrow. And he predicted it. So well done, Pie and Bov, mate.
I've got to say, it was nice to be reminded of Daniel Stendel. That was a wee blast from the past. I remember talking to you and JJ Bull about Stendel ball, and it all looked amazing, and then it just went absolutely tits up.
The only team he beat was Rangers.
Was that? Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. Was this around about the COVID time?
I think it was like like 2 last-minute type goals or something like that.
Yeah. I think that Hearts game was the week before the Hearts St Mirren game with Stendal. I think that was the week before COVID.
Yeah,
I seem to remember it.
Yeah. Who comes in for Hearts then? Because St Johnstone should appoint Steven Naismith. Or Ian Murray. Ian Murray's been linked to St Johnstone.
Oh, but also the other way. I mean, could this be the return again of Craig Levein to Tynecastle?
Oh,
the drama. God. I mean, Andrew, call me a conspiracy theorist, but is it any coincidence that Craig Levein was let go by St Johnstone this week on the verge of Steven Naismith being sacked by Hearts? He
loves it. He loves it. He loves it.
Just quickly as well on the Levein timing as well. I found obviously not as odd as the Ian Murray, but St Johnstone, I think he did his press conference about 1 o'clock on the, might be the Tuesday or something, and there was I saw a journalist tweet, forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but was just saying, I had a chat with Craig Levein there. He was talking about what they did at training today and what they're preparing for in the week for the game at the weekend. Just get sacked. I imagine a couple hours later. So guy's about to put that in the paper, and yeah, wild.
What's that podcast he does with Amy Irons?
Sacked in the
Sacked in the
morning.
I think he still
Straight
did
from the
it while he was
horses,
St
mate.
Johnstone manager. But yeah, that could be quite good if that comes back. Stephen Robinson for the Hearts job. Oh, sorry, St Mirren fans. Or Craig Gordon.
No, I think that's going down the same path as the whole Steven
Of
Naismith
course it
thing.
is.
I think,
Of course it is. But that is the traditional Scottish way. Just get an
Yeah.
ex-player in who's maybe still playing. Oh, cheap.
I think they need to get it right, and they need to go long term, because there's obviously this talk with Tony Bloom potentially investing in Hearts, and
Excellent point, mate.
got a brilliant strategy with Brighton, with Union Saint-Gilloise, I think.
Yeah,
in
that's right.
Belgium. So
Finn says that team name very well, as we know from last season. Because they played Rangers, didn't they?
yeah, and they've been drawn against Rangers in the group stage again this year. Saint-Gilloise.
Gillois.
USG.
USG, mate.
It's a really good point you make, though, Calum, because I think that has to be something that's weighing on the Hearts board mind at the moment, maybe with potential new manager coming in. And I think, like in Scottish football, you will hear all the same names being mentioned as you always do with every job. Although I think Neil Lennon might be looked over for this particular one coming up. But
Maybe, yeah.
I think you'll hear a lot of like Stephen Robinson and maybe even Derek McInnes as well at Kilmarnock could be a name that's linked quite heavily. But it'd be wondering, given what Aberdeen have done, looking outside of Scotland and looking for sort of a bit of a fresh, maybe more
I think that's what they'll do.
progressive approach. That might be the kind of the blueprint now for that size, that type of team. Hearts are one of the top end teams in the table, looking for a new manager.
The Jambo print. Right, we've got to move on. We've spent too much time on people being sacked. Some good news. Friend of the podcast, John Attenborough, was awarded a special achievement from the SPFL alongside his dog, Sam, because they became the first man and dog to visit all 42 SPFL grounds. John is blind, so he goes to games with Sam and he just enjoys the atmosphere. And he came on the podcast to talk about it and the experience and kind of the journey that he's been on through football in Scotland. And it's just really, really lovely. So well done, John. That's absolute class.
Football, bloody hell.
The best game of the weekend, though, I'd have to say, was Ross County St Johnstone. So St Johnstone might not be with Craig Levein anymore, but 3-3. And at one point, St Johnstone were 3-1 up, courtesy of two utter bangers from Nicky Clark. Free kicks.
It's a shame Laura's in Chicago this week and not on the show, so that she'd be able to tell us that a free kick is basically just like a penalty. There's nothing special about it. I love when
should
she
all
goes
go
down
in.
that sideline.
It's the classic Roy Keane. They're just doing their job.
Terrific goals. Lovely to see. I do think that this game maybe was rivaled by the Wraith Rovers Hamilton game as well, which I also ended 3-3, but I think we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. I'm always curious to see what happens with teams the game after they sack a manager. Do you get a bit of a bounce, or does anything change? And for St Johnstone to come back was, I think, shows real cojones, real balls.
Absolutely. Obviously, we've spoken about Hearts losing 2-1 to St Mirren, so it kind of ended up just being the League Cup over the weekend, and we have to start there with Celtic Falkirk. Now Celtic were 5-2 winners, but Falkirk went far away from a possible famous victory there. They were 2-1 up, and then Brendan Rodgers decided to throw 30 million on the park, and that kind of changed everything. But that's, you know what, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It paid off. Adam Ida's goals were really, really good. Nicholas Kuhn's were really, really good, and they're going to be playing Aberdeen in the semi-finals. I wonder if Celtic would have rather have had Rangers, to be honest, at this stage. Calum, what do you think?
I think Rodgers maybe hinted at that a little bit in his post-match with Premier Sports. I think he said Falkirk were the best team that they played this season, which was it praise to Falkirk or was it a sly dig to Philip Clement and Rangers, but no, I thought I watched the game. I thought Falkirk were brilliant, bit of
They were.
a breath of fresh air. Obviously being a Livingston fan, we've gone to Celtic Park numerous occasions, got the odd result there, but it's been back to the wall, kind of getting the odd 0-0. We gave them a good game in the Cup last season, but Falkirk proper took the game to them, broke with purpose, obviously defended at times, but you know, they got their 2 goals, thought they were excellent. And like I say, sort of, you need to sacrifice at times and sit in that low block or whatever you want to call it. But every time they got the ball, they looked a threat going forward. But as you said, Andrew, ultimately, Celtic's just strength and depth coming off the bench. I think Ida got the equaliser and you sensed, right, they're going to win it at some point, and then it was maybe 30 seconds after kickoff, they go and they go 3-2 up, and yeah, Falkirk just go after that. But feel for them a little. Still unbeaten in the league and things, and obviously half got my eye on them as a Livy supporter with the championship this season.
Rangers were comfortable against Dundee, Finn. And it's weird, actually, with the Copeland stand, because I saw a photo of it, and someone posted it before and after. And like the view is totally different from what it was. Like in terms of you have less of a view.
Well, you can still see the full pitch, and I also think those photos were taken from people standing at the back of the stand, so it does kind of cover
fine.
It reminded me a little bit of I went down to Anfield, it would be about 2 years ago now, where you've got that enormous main stand. They've just built it up into heaven, basically. But the main stand is absolutely gargantuan, but it's the same thing. You can't actually see it. So my seat was right at the back of this enormous main stand, and all you can see is the pitch. You can't see any of the advertising hoardings on the other side of the ground in terms of the supporters. So it's when you're trying to expand on stadiums that only have a certain width or height or depth, like you have to sacrifice certain things, but it doesn't impede your view of the pitch at all. Just seeing the other side of the stadium maybe a bit, but it was fairly routine, I think, for Rangers. Obviously, first time back at Ibrox this season. I think it was 7 of the Rangers squad were playing at Ibrox for the first time, so it's a new experience for them. In terms of the game, I think it was fairly routine. I don't think the result was ever in much doubt. Dessers with a couple of goals, and of course Tav with a penalty. So I think the goals came at good times. I think Rangers pretty comfortably through. I think to your point of would Celtic have rather played Rangers right now, I think you're absolutely right. And Brendan Rodgers is not lying when he says Falkirk put up more of a fight, I think, than Rangers did. It was so routine and comfortable in the Old Firm game, and Falkirk took the game to them. Just on Falkirk, they look every inch a team that's undefeated in 40 plus league matches. Like there's a real synergy there to the way that they play, and there's a real confidence, I think, to the way that they play as well. They just ultimately didn't have the legs or the strength and depth in their squad to do it for a full 90 minutes. But they look coming up into the championship this season like they could potentially do back-to-back promotions, or at least be challenging at that end of the table, because they just look really, really good, really fluid. Also, that kit is banging. Like the red with the gold and the gold sponsor and everything on it. It looked like a Man United kit or something. I thought it looked fantastic. I think, to be honest, at this stage in the season, I think Aberdeen Celtic is an incredible semi-final to have, because again, I know just looking at the Aberdeen game, it was 4-0 and incredibly comfortable, I think, for Aberdeen. But again, just the fluidity that they're playing with, and obviously we talked about this last week with Glenn Schroeder from the Red Tinted Spectacles podcast, that there's something that feels a bit tangibly different about Aberdeen this season. So I think that could be a really electric semi-final, and I think it would probably be a bigger contest than if it was the Old Firm meeting in that match, or even Aberdeen Rangers at this stage in the season.
Well, Motherwell got through because of a last-minute penalty from Lennon Miller. So it's going to be Motherwell Rangers. I think those games get played over the 2nd of November, 2nd and 3rd of November, I think. Interestingly, though, if we focus on the Celtic and Aberdeen match, they do play on the 19th of October in the league. So that could be, I think you did say that actually, Calum. So it could be quite interesting to see how that one plays out. It could be the first games. It's going to end up a draw, isn't it? Europe as well for Rangers. Last week was just all Champions League, wasn't it? So this week is the first Europa League fixtures. It's away to Malmö, and I'm doing the game. Hey, I'll be doing the game as well for TNT. So I'm looking forward to that. But Finn, are you looking forward to that?
It's a tricky game to start with. I think Malmo are basically just on the verge of, if they haven't actually won already this weekend, on the verge of sealing up the Swedish title. I think they're 11 points clear or something with not many games left. So, but I think just with the way that the league set up is of the Europa League this year, obviously you're not drawn against every team home and away. There's certain games that are home and certain games that are away. And I think you obviously look to your home games as important once you're trying to get the points in. But like, for example, Rangers have a home game against Lyon. I think that'll be really difficult. Tottenham at home, which is really difficult draw. So you may be looking to the games like Union Saint-Gilloise or Malmo away to be in, like, if you can get something out of those games, that might be the difference in you getting out the group stage or not. Malmo are a bit of a bogey team for Rangers. So they knocked them out of the Champions League qualifiers about three years ago from memory. And before that as well, I think they played in I think it was maybe Ali McCoist's season as a manager as well, 2011, 2012 or something like that. I seem to remember them knocking Rangers out in a qualifying round.
They knocked Celtic out as well in the Champions League back in 2015.
Their form's tailed off a little bit in the league recently, a few draws and everything, even though they're far in front. And I'm always interested. I think so when a team's playing really well, it naturally you can kind of just take your foot off the gas. It's actually quite hard to put your foot back on the gas once you've started to do that. So it could be a good time for Rangers to play them. But then given how Rangers have looked, which is pretty hot and cold, I think is the best way to describe it so far this season, it'll be a really tough game going out there.
Yeah, really tough. But it's good to see our teams still in Europe. It's very important this year because the coefficient points are not looking too good right now, and we don't want to be big fans of the coefficient again. Desperately looking at coefficient tables and wondering where the points are going to be. But thankfully, Celtic won their opening match at Celtic Park against Levein Bratislava. Pretty emphatic 5-1 win. And the first time, actually, that Celtic have won their opening Champions League game. And everyone in the media are like, oh, maybe this is the year this format could suit Celtic. Maybe it will. But I think Celtic fans have to enjoy enjoy that victory and not worry too much about the fixtures that are coming up. So yeah, for Hearts though, it'll be the 6th of October. They're away to Dynamo Minsk. Who knows if they'll have a new manager in time?
They've also got Copenhagen and Cercle Bruges, interestingly, which is the two teams Kilmarnock faced in their qualifiers. So kind of know a wee bit about them. Maybe they'll be going to Derek McInnes and asking him, how do you set up?
Fancy another crack at it, Deeks?
It'll be interesting. Obviously, want Scottish clubs to do well in Europe. Good start for Celtic. I actually think Celtic could do really well. Obviously, being Rangers, I wouldn't say carrying the coefficient as such, but I think Rangers have kind of switched it on in Europe over the last however many seasons. But I think their 8-team draw is, I think, more difficult in the Europa League than Celtic's in the Champions League, if that makes any sense to anyone.
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
I think if you look at some of the teams, obviously we watched Slovan Bratislava the other night and they didn't look up to much. Obviously, I'm well versed on Lyon and Nice, two very good teams. Tottenham, Man United, Olympiacos won the Conference League last year, did they? So very tough when you look at, obviously Celtic have some tough opposition. Dortmund next week, I think.
Well, see, I did the goal show for TNT last week. I watched a lot of that Dortmund game and they were rubbish against Bruges. I know they won 2-0. I think it was Gittins who got both goals, but it was they were pretty uninspiring, to be honest. So I think Celtic could go over there with a lot of excitement and just play the way they want to play. You don't want to get caught up in the atmosphere there.
They got beat 5-1 today off Stuttgart.
Come on, Celtic. Do it for Scotland. And Rangers this week, do it for Scotland. And then Hearts next week, do it for Scotland. Come on, lads. Come on. Right, can we dip into the lower leagues? And as it's your initiation, Calum, I want you to kick things off in the Championship, and you can tell us all about what's happening to Livingston. Although there wasn't really much happening with Livingston. the weekend?
Yeah, not much happening with us. Obviously, courtesy of Falkirk being in the League Cup, our fixture, we were meant to play Falkirk, the only one that wasn't on, so that's been rescheduled, I think, for next month. But full fixture card apart from that, the 4 games were on. Game of the weekend at Starks Park. The ending, pretty much a carbon copy of that County versus St Johnstone game. Wraith Rovers letting a 2-goal lead slip late on. Neil Collins, obviously, first home match in charge since taking over from Ian Murray, but 3-1 they led, 94th minute equaliser in the end, went to 3-2 and then a 94th minute equaliser from Ollie Shaw. And it keeps Wraith in the bottom 2, actually. Lewis Stevenson, though, did score an absolute worldie.
Oh, class.
Incredible.
Just such an aesthetically beautiful goal.
Yeah.
The camera angle's perfect for it as well, the one that I've seen shared online. And it's also, it's one of those things, if you've
Just
played
stand the camera
football
on.
and no, but I'm saying where he is on the pitch
Yeah,
is perfect to capture the flight of the ball. And it's one of those things that, like, when you've played football and sometimes you just hit a shot and you're like, that is in. It's in before it, just after it's left your foot. And just beautiful, beautiful.
Really, really difficult start for Wraith. It looked like that would be their first win since the opening day, I think. But already 11 points now behind leaders Ayr United. Scott Brown's side, though, they could only draw 1-1 this weekend away to Queen's Park. Decent point maybe for them. Still keep that unbeaten run going. Still top of the table, as I say, but joint on points with Falkirk. It's just goal difference keeping Ayr in front. They've also played 2 games more, though. Perfect 100% start for Falkirk. And obviously Livingston, the third and final unbeaten side. Big game for Levein next week at home to Airdrie, who are bottom of the table. The other 2 games, Partick Thistle claiming a big 3 points. Very late winner for them, Aidan Fitzpatrick, as they climb into the playoff places. And as we know, a difficult week for Morton off the pitch. They grabbed a much needed first win in the league, beating Airdrie. Diamonds now bottom of the table. But such as the mental brilliant league that is the Championship, bottom of the league, they're 4 points behind 4th.
Yeah, I love the Championship. There's always so much going on. It's absolute class. I'll take League One because my team's in there. I'll hold fire on them first because Alloa, they're the only, they're still unbeaten in League One. They lead the way after a 1-0 win over Celtic Hearts. Connor Salmon with the only goal. Remember him? Still going. 87 years old, but still scoring goals. It's 2 weekends in a row as well.
Did he get a pizza? Where he looked thrilled at the end of that game? No, one of the most iconic pictures in the Scottish football history.
Oh man, I hope he did. Queen of the South, they were 0-0 against Stenhousemuir, but still, in a decent position in the league table. I think 3rd still, and a good response after two defeats in a row, a win and a draw now, so not too bad. 3rd in the table, but a huge win at the bottom of the table for Arbroath. They beat Annan Athletic 2-0 at home. They're still bottom of the table, but they are now level on points with Dumbarton, because they lost to Montrose. So it's really tight at both ends of the table. So League One looking interesting, but still a long way to go, with a lot of teams vying for places still. Go on, Finn. Take us to League Two.
League Two, Peterhead lost the first match of the season, a 2-0 defeat away to Elgin City. And
Peter lost the heat.
But that means Elgin City, the only undefeated team in League Two, they're in 3rd. They're still 3 points behind Peterhead. There was a lovely thing though. The team that's in 2nd place at the moment, just a point behind Peterhead now, is East Fife. And I'd seen something where the manager of East Fife now is Dick Campbell, legend of the game, was at Arbroath for the last number of seasons, and now he's at East Fife. He's signed Andrew Todd on loan from Dunfermline. He's the eldest son of Tars legend Andy Todd, which means that he'll now have managed someone from the Todd family, whether it was his dad or his son Andrew or Andy, in 4 different decades now, which is quite a nice wee fact. Yeah. Forfar as well, just at the wrong end of the table. Forfar got their first league win of the season. They beat fellow strugglers Stranraer, so both of them are tied on 5 points at the bottom of the table. And I'm always keeping a lookout for Clyde now. No real vested interest apart from last season, where I was thinking they might be challenging for the. I was thinking they might be challenging for the title, and they ended up almost getting relegated. Of course, Ian McCall came in and turned things around just for them. But yeah, they're looking a wee bit ropey. 1 league win in 7 matches, and they've not won in any of their last 6. So yeah,
I wonder who Ian McCall's going to affect next, because I quite like the story of Ian McCall and the players that he's enhanced in the past. So the likes of Lauren Shankland was one of them. Stephen Dobie was another, actually, that he enhanced at Queen of the South. And then the most recent one is the lad who just went to Celtic from Dundee.
Luke McCowan.
Luke McCowan. So he gave Luke McCowan his first kind of foray into full-time football as well. So who knows, Clyde could have a future Scotland superstar in their midst. Clyde fans might be telling me to F off now, but there you go.
I think Clyde fans will be hoping that they find him soon.
Right, well, we have to end the podcast there. What a way to end it. Thanks, Finn. Cheers, Calum. And all that's left to say is, if you are still listening to this show, go away, do something better with your life. But listen next week, please. That'd be great. Bye.